Daniel Cole had seen many strange things during his years hauling cargo across the Outer Rim. He had watched twin suns set over frozen moons. He had traded stories with species that breathed methane and communicated through color. But he had never seen anything like the scene unfolding before him in the crowded corridors of Nexus 7. The trading station was busy that day. Merchants from a dozen worlds pushed through the narrow passages, their voices creating a constant hum of commerce and negotiation. Daniel had just finished unloading medical supplies and was heading toward the payment office when the crowd suddenly parted. Three slavers walked through the gap. They were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms, their faces flat and expressionless. Between them, bound with energy chains that glowed a sickly green, walked a female from a species Daniel recognized immediately. They were legendary throughout the galaxy. They were warriors without equal, a proud species that had conquered half a dozen star systems before deciding that expansion was beneath them. They stood taller than humans, with skin that shifted between shades of blue and silver. Their eyes were large and dark, and their movements held a grace that spoke of centuries of martial tradition. This female was young, perhaps the equivalent of 20 human years. Her silver skin was marked with bruises, and her dark eyes burned with shame rather than fear. She walked with her head down, refusing to look at the crowds watching her humiliation. Daniel felt something twist in his chest. He had no business getting involved. They had refused all contact with humanity for decades. They considered humans primitive, barely worth acknowledging. If Daniel tried to help one of their people, they would likely be insulted rather than grateful. But he could not walk away. They stopped in a small plaza where several species had gathered. One of the slavers, the largest of the three, raised his voice so everyone could hear. "Fresh merchandise," he announced. "Female, young and healthy. Her clan failed to pay their debts, so she belongs to us now. We accept payment in standard credits or rare minerals. Who wants to start the bidding?" Daniel looked around the plaza. He saw merchants pretending not to notice. He saw traders whispering among themselves. He saw a pair of diplomats shaking their heads in disgust but doing nothing. No were present. Of course they were not. Their people rarely visited stations like this, and even if they did, their code of honor prevented them from negotiating with slavers. To buy back one of their own would be an admission of weakness. The slaver grinned. "No takers. Then we take her home. Make excellent servants once you break their spirit. It takes time, but we enjoy the process." The female lifted her head for the first time. Her dark eyes swept across the crowd with contempt. She expected nothing from these strangers. She had already accepted her fate. Daniel stepped forward. "I have a different offer," he said. The crowd went quiet. The slaver turned his flat face toward Daniel, studying him with obvious amusement. "A human," the slaver said. "How interesting. What could you possibly offer us, little creature?" Daniel kept his voice steady. "Me, I offer myself in trade for the—" Laughter erupted from the three slavers. The largest one shook his head, still chuckling. "Why would we trade valuable merchandise for a human?" "Because humans are better slaves," Daniel said. He hated the words coming out of his mouth, but he kept going. "We adapt to any environment. We can work longer hours than most species. We heal quickly from injuries, and we are rare in your markets, which makes us valuable to collectors." The slaver stopped laughing. His 4 eyes narrowed as he considered the offer. "You make an interesting point, human, but why would you do this? What is the female to you?" Daniel had no good answer. He did not know this female. He owed her nothing. Her own people would probably despise him for interfering in their affairs. "Does it matter?" he asked. "I am offering you a trade. Take it or leave it." The slaver looked at his companions. They exchanged words in their own language, too quiet for Daniel to hear. Finally, the largest one nodded. "We accept the human for the—" The energy chains dissolved from the female's wrists. She stumbled slightly, then caught herself. Her dark eyes fixed on Daniel with an expression he could not read. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was soft but strong. "Because someone had to," Daniel said. The slavers grabbed his arms and began fitting him with the same chains the female had worn. The green energy burned against his skin, but he did not cry out. "What is your name, human?" the female asked. "Daniel Cole." She nodded once, a small gesture that might have meant respect or confusion or something else entirely. "I am of clan. I will not forget what you have done." Then she turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd before Daniel could respond. The slavers dragged him in the opposite direction, toward the docking bays where their ship waited. Commander Lisa Morgan watched the entire scene from a nearby observation deck. She was Earth Alliance diplomatic for Nexus 7, and she had learned long ago that interfering in private transactions on neutral ground caused more problems than it solved. But this was different. A human citizen had just traded his freedom for a captive. She activated her communication device. "Morgan to Alliance Command, we have a situation." Meanwhile, made her way to a small ship docked in the far section of the station. Her clan had sent her on a simple trading mission, but they had ambushed her vessel and killed her crew. She had expected to die in slavery. Instead, a human had saved her. She entered her ship and activated the long-range communicator. The face of High Matriarch appeared on the screen, ancient and stern. "We received your distress signal. Are you injured?" "I am free, High Matriarch, but there is something you must know." Told her the story. She described the human who had stepped forward when no one else would. She explained how he had traded his own freedom for hers without asking for anything in return. The High Matriarch listened in silence. When finished, the old female's expression had turned cold. "A human shamed us," she said. "A human did what we could not do for our own blood. This is unacceptable. High Matriarch, he saved my life. He exposed our weakness to the galaxy. Every species on that station saw a human succeed where the failed. This insult cannot stand." Felt fear creeping into her hearts. "What will you do?" The High Matriarch's dark eyes blazed with ancient pride. "From this moment, Daniel Cole is declared prey. Our hunters will find him and they will kill him. Only his blood can wash away our shame." The communication ended. Stood alone in her ship, her heart's pounding. The human who saved her had just been sentenced to death by her own people. The slave ship was called the Iron Fist, and it smelled like rust and suffering. Daniel spent his first 3 days in a small cell near the engine room, where the constant vibration made sleep almost impossible. They fed him twice a day, just enough to keep him alive but weak. They thought he was broken already. Daniel let them believe it. He sat quietly in his cell, head down, shoulders slumped. When the guards walked past, he avoided their eyes. When they laughed at him, he did not respond. He gave them exactly what they expected from a defeated prisoner. But inside his mind, Daniel was working. He counted the guards and learned their patrol schedules. He noticed which ones were lazy and which ones were alert. He studied the layout of the ship through the small window in his cell door, memorizing every corridor he could see. He tested the strength of his chains when no one was watching. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the fastest or the most advanced, but they had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that should have destroyed them. They had learned to wait, to plan, and to strike when the moment was right. Daniel would find his moment. On the 4th day, the ship stopped at a remote outpost called Marker Station. They needed supplies, and this was the last stop before there. Daniel heard the guards talking about it through the walls of his cell. One of them laughed about what waited for him on the slave markets there were brutal. Humans who entered them never came out. Daniel decided he would not reach the. When the guards came to move him to a holding area during resupply, Daniel acted weak and clumsy. He stumbled as he walked, forcing the guards to grab his arms and drag him forward. They insulted him and laughed at his frailty. They did not notice him studying the release mechanism on his chains. Marker Station was old and poorly maintained. The corridors were narrow, the lighting was dim, and the maintenance systems were failing. Perfect conditions for what Daniel had planned. He waited until they reached a junction where 2 corridors met. Only 2 guards escorted him now. The others had gone to oversee the supply transfer. Daniel pretended to fall. As he went down, his fingers found a loose panel on the floor. He pulled it free in one motion and swung it into the face of the nearest guard. They screamed and stumbled backward. Daniel did not hesitate. He grabbed the guard's shock stick and drove it into his chest. The collapsed, his body twitching. The second guard raised his weapon, but Daniel was already moving. He threw himself low under the energy blast and drove his shoulder into the guard's legs. They went down together, struggling on the cold floor. Were strong, but they were not built for close combat. Daniel found the guard's throat and squeezed until the struggling stopped. 2 guards dead, alarms would sound soon. Daniel grabbed the key device from the first guard's belt and freed himself from the chains. Then he ran into the maintenance tunnels that connected the station's lower levels. The tunnels were dark and cramped, filled with pipes and cables that had not been serviced in years. Daniel moved through them as quickly as he could, putting distance between himself and the scene of his escape. Behind him, he heard the alarms finally begin to wail. Far away, aboard the warship Blade of Dawn, received her orders. She stood in the briefing chamber with 11 other hunters, all of them warriors trained from childhood. They were the best trackers her people had produced in generations. And they had been sent to kill one human. The hunt leader was a male named, a veteran with cold eyes and colder hands. He showed no emotion as he explained the mission. The human Daniel Cole has been declared prey by the High Matriarch. He is currently held aboard a slave ship traveling toward there. We will intercept the vessel and complete the hunt. One of the hunters raised her hand. Why not let them keep him? He will die in their markets soon enough. Because his death must be ours, said. The shame he brought upon us can only be erased by hands. This is not negotiation. This is restoration of honor. Said nothing. She kept her face blank and her posture correct, but her hearts were troubled. Daniel Cole had saved her life. He had traded his freedom for a stranger, asking nothing in return, and now she was expected to help kill him. The Blade of Dawn was fast, one of the fastest ships in the fleet. They caught up with the vessel at Marker Station just as the alarms began to sound. Smiled when he heard the reports. The human had escaped his captors. He was loose somewhere on the station. This makes our task more interesting, he said. The prey has spirit, good. It will make the kill more satisfying. The hunters deployed into the station, spreading out to cover all possible escape routes. Was assigned to the lower maintenance levels, where thermal scans had detected movement. She moved through the dark tunnels alone, her senses sharp, could see in dim light better than most species. They could hear heartbeats from 20 meters away. They were perfect predators. But as tracked her prey through the twisting corridors, she began to notice something strange. The human was not running blindly. He was leaving false trails, doubling back, using the station's failing systems to mask his movements. This was not the behavior of a frightened animal. This was the behavior of someone who had been hunted before and knew how to survive. Found a trap set in one of the narrow passages. It was crude but clever, designed to collapse a section of ceiling on anyone who triggered it. She disarmed it carefully and continued her pursuit. Another trap waited around the next corner. Then another. The human was slowing down his pursuers, buying time to find an escape route. Through her communication device, heard reports from other hunters. 2 had been injured by similar traps. 1 had fallen through a weakened floor panel and broken his leg. The prey was fighting back. His voice came through the channel, cold with anger. Find him and end this. No more games. Moved deeper into the tunnels. She could hear the human now, his breathing heavy, his footsteps careful. He was close. She rounded a corner and found him. Daniel Cole stood in a dead-end corridor, his back against a sealed door. He was wounded, blood running from a cut on his forehead. His clothes were torn and dirty. He held a piece of metal pipe in his hands like a weapon. He should have looked defeated. He should have looked afraid. Instead, he looked out with steady eyes and raised his makeshift weapon. I remember you, he said. You are the one I traded for. Yes, said. She held her blade ready but did not attack. My name is. Are you here to kill me? Those are my orders. Daniel nodded slowly. He did not lower his weapon, but he did not try to run either. Then I guess we have a problem, he said, because I do not plan to die today. Looked at this strange creature, this human who had sacrificed everything for her and now stood ready to fight even though he could not possibly win. Something shifted inside her chest. No, she said quietly, I do not believe you do. She lowered her blade. Daniel watched the female lower her blade and felt confusion replace his fear. Seconds ago, she had been hunting him. Now she stood before him with something like doubt in her dark eyes. I do not understand, he said. Your people want me dead. Why would you stop? Looked at the blade in her hand, then back at Daniel. You traded your freedom for mine. You did not know me. You owed me nothing. Yet you stepped forward when no one else would. That does not answer my question. Among my people, there is a debt called the life bond. When someone saves your life without expectation of reward, you owe them a debt that cannot be broken. My culture demands I kill you to restore honor, but my personal code demands I protect you because you saved me. Daniel lowered his pipe slightly. Those two things seem to cancel each other out. They do, which is why I must make a choice, sheathed her blade. I choose to honor the debt. I will help you escape. Before Daniel could respond, they both heard footsteps approaching from the corridor behind. The other hunters were closing in. Follow me, said. There is a hidden passage that leads to the station's communication array. If you can send a signal to your people, they might be able to help. What about you? If you help me, they will know you betrayed them. His expression hardened. Then I will be hunted alongside you. It does not matter. I made my choice. She turned and moved quickly down a side passage that Daniel had not noticed before. He followed her into the darkness, his heart pounding. They moved through tunnels that seemed ancient, passages that had been sealed off and forgotten decades ago. Navigated them with confidence, her eyes seeing clearly where Daniel stumbled in the darkness. How do you know this place so well? Daniel asked. I studied the station schematics while tracking you. I wanted to understand how you were evading us so effectively. She glanced back at him. You are more resourceful than I expected. Most prey panics and runs blindly. You set traps. You planned your movements. You fought back. Humans have been hunted before, Daniel said. By predators, by each other, by circumstances that should have destroyed us. We learned to survive because we had no other choice. They reached a junction where three passages met. Paused, tilting her head as she listened to something Daniel could not hear. They are splitting up, she said. Suspect's treachery. He is sending hunters to cover all possible routes. Can we avoid them? Not all of them. We will have to fight. Daniel gripped his pipe. I'm not exactly equipped for fighting warriors. Reached into her belt and pulled out a small blade. She handed it to Daniel. It is not much, but it is better than a pipe. Stay behind me and strike only when you have a clear opening. Do not try to match them strength for strength. You will lose. They continued moving, faster now. The passages grew wider as they approached the communication array. Daniel could see light ahead, the glow of functioning systems in a station that was mostly dead. Two hunters stepped out of the shadows. They were male, tall and broad, with blades already drawn, their dark eyes fixed on with disgust. Traitor, one of them said, you shame your entire clan. I honor my debt, replied. Stand aside and let us pass. The hunter laughed. You think we will let you walk away with the prey? We'll have both your heads. He attacked without warning, his blade slicing towards throat. She blocked the strike and countered with a kick that sent him stumbling backward. The second hunter moved toward Daniel. Daniel did not wait for the attack. He ducked low and threw himself at the hunter's legs, the same move he had used against the guard, but were faster than the hunter, and brought his blade down in a vicious arc. Daniel rolled away, feeling the blade whistle past his ear. He came up swinging his small knife and caught the hunter's arm, drawing a thin line of silver blood. The hunter hissed in surprise. The human has teeth. More than you know, Daniel said. They circled each other in the narrow passage. Daniel knew he could not win a prolonged fight. He needed to end this quickly or not at all. The hunter lunged. Daniel threw his knife at the hunter's face, forcing him to dodge. In that moment of distraction, Daniel grabbed a loose cable hanging from the ceiling and yanked it free. Sparks exploded as the cable whipped across the hunter's chest. The screamed as electricity coursed through his body. He collapsed, twitching. Daniel turned to help, but she had already finished her opponent. The hunter lay unconscious at her feet, his blade several meters away. You fight dirty, said. There was approval in her voice. I fight to survive. They ran the final distance to the communication array. It was a small room filled with old equipment, most of it barely functional. Daniel found a console that still worked and began entering the frequency for Earth Alliance emergency channels. This is Daniel Cole, civilian cargo hauler, registration number 774. I am trapped on marker station in the outer rim. I am being hunted by warriors. Request immediate assistance. He repeated the message 3 times before pulled him away from the console. We cannot stay here, we'll come. They fled through another passage, this one leading toward the station's docking bays. If they could steal a ship, they might have a chance. But was waiting for them. The hunt leader stood alone in the corridor ahead, his blade drawn. His face showed no emotion as he watched them approach. He said, I expected better from you. and I expected wisdom from you. This human saved my life. The life bond is sacred. The honor of our people is more sacred. You know this." He raised his blade. "Stand aside. I will make his death quick, and perhaps the matriarch will show you mercy." Drew her own blade. "I will not stand aside." Attacked with terrifying speed, his blade met in a clash of metal that echoed through the corridor. They fought like dancers, their movements precise and deadly. Daniel watched helplessly. He could not match a warrior. If fell, he would follow. But did not fall. She matched strike for strike, her younger body compensating for his greater experience. The fight raged back and forth, neither gaining advantage. Then Daniel saw his moment. A pipe ran along the ceiling above. It was rusted and weak, barely holding together. Daniel grabbed a piece of debris and threw it hard. The debris struck the pipe. It burst open, spraying superheated steam directly into his face. The hunt leader screamed and stumbled backward, his hands covering his burned eyes. Did not hesitate. Her blade flashed once and fell. He was not dead, but he was no longer a threat. Looked at Daniel with something new in her eyes. Respect, perhaps, or wonder. "You fight like no species I have ever seen," she said. "We fight like humans," Daniel replied. "We use everything we have." They ran toward the docking bay, leaving bleeding on the floor behind them. The hunt was not over, but for the first time, Daniel believed they might actually survive. The shuttle they stole was old and barely functional, but it flew. Daniel pushed the engines as hard as he dared while monitored the sensors behind him. The stars stretched into lines as they jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving marker station behind. "We have perhaps 6 hours before they catch up to us," said. "Warships are faster than this vessel." "Then we need to reach human space before that." Daniel checked the navigation computer. "The nearest Earth Alliance outpost is 9 hours away at maximum speed." "We will not make it." Daniel did not respond. He already knew the math, but giving up was not something he knew how to do. They traveled in silence for a while, the hum of the engines filling the small cabin. Eventually, spoke again. "Tell me about your people." Daniel glanced at her. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. I was taught that humans are primitive, barely worthy of notice, yet you have surprised me at every turn. I want to understand why." Daniel thought about how to answer. He had never been asked to explain humanity before. "We come from a planet that tried to kill us," he said finally. "Ice ages, diseases, predators, natural disasters. Our world was harsh and we were soft. We had no claws, no armor, no venom. We could not run fast or see in the dark." "How did you survive?" "We adapted. We made tools to replace the claws we did not have. We built shelters to protect us from the cold. We learned to work together because alone we were weak. Together we were strong." "Listen carefully. Your species values cooperation. More than that, we value stubbornness. When something knocks us down, we get back up. When something tries to kill us, we find a way to survive. We have lost countless times throughout our history, but we have never stopped trying." "That sounds exhausting." Daniel laughed, the first real laugh he had managed in days. "It is, but it is also who we are." The sensors beeped, checked the readings and frowned. "There is damage to the secondary power coupling. We are losing energy faster than anticipated." Daniel moved to the engineering console. The damage was worse than had described. Something had been knocked loose during their escape, and now the shuttle was slowly bleeding power. "I can fix it," he said, "but I need to access the external coupling. That requires going outside the ship while we are traveling at faster-than-light speed. The radiation alone would kill you." "Not if I am fast." Daniel was already pulling on an environmental suit. "I have done repairs like this before. Not at this speed, but the principle is the same." Grabbed his arm. "This is foolish, the risk is too great. If I do not fix it, we lose power in 3 hours. Then they catch us and we both die." He sealed his helmet. "I would rather take a chance than wait for certain death." He climbed into the airlock before could argue further. The space outside the shuttle was chaos. Colors streaked past in impossible patterns as the ship moved faster than light should allow. Radiation warnings flashed constantly inside Daniel's helmet. His suit was already heating up. He found the damaged coupling and went to work. His hands moved quickly, splicing wires and replacing burned components. The heat grew worse. Warning lights turned from yellow to red. Daniel ignored them. Back inside the shuttle, watched the airlock sensors with growing concern. The human had been outside for 4 minutes. No species she knew could survive that kind of exposure for more than 2. At 5 minutes, she prepared to seal the airlock permanently. If he was dead, she could not risk the radiation flooding the cabin. At 5 minutes and 30 seconds, the airlock cycled. Daniel stumbled inside, his suit smoking, his hands shaking. He collapsed on the floor of the cabin. "Power coupling is fixed," he said. "We should have enough to reach the outpost now." Stared at him. His suit readings showed exposure levels that should have been fatal. His hands were burned through his gloves, yet he was still breathing, still conscious, still functioning. "You should be dead," she said. "Probably." Daniel pulled off his helmet and winced. "Humans are hard to kill. We do not know when to quit." She helped him to the medical station and treated his burns as best she could with the limited supplies available. The wounds were serious but not permanent. He would recover. "Why did you do that?" she asked as she worked. "You could have died." "Because it needed to be done." He looked at her with tired eyes. "Is that not obvious?" Thought about her training, about everything she had been taught regarding honor and duty and sacrifice. They valued courage above all things. They believed that facing death without fear was the highest virtue. But humans, she was beginning to understand, did not face death without fear. They felt the fear and acted anyway. They made the choice to risk everything even when they were terrified. That was something different, something she had never encountered before. The sensors beeped again. This time the news was bad. "Vessels," said, "a hunting fleet. They will intercept us in 40 minutes." Daniel looked at the readings. 5 warships, all faster and more powerful than their stolen shuttle. There was no escape. "Can you contact them?" he asked. "Why would I do that?" "Because I have an idea." Daniel sat up despite his injuries. "You told me about your people's traditions, the honor codes that govern how you live and fight. There must be something in those codes that can help us." Thought carefully. There is the right of challenge. When prey proves worthy, it can demand to face its accuser directly. Single combat to determine guilt or innocence. What happens if the prey wins? They go free, all charges are dismissed and the hunt is declared unjust. She hesitated. But no prey has ever won. The challenges are designed to be unwinnable. Daniel smiled grimly. "Then I will be the first." He moved to the communication array and opened a channel to the approaching fleet. When the face of a commander appeared on screen, Daniel spoke with a confidence he did not feel. "This is Daniel Cole of Earth. I invoke the right of challenge. I demand to face the High Matriarch's champion in single combat. If I win and I go free. If I lose, my death satisfies your honor." The commander looked shocked. Behind him, Daniel could hear voices arguing in the language. After a long moment, the commander spoke. "The High Matriarch accepts your challenge. Prepare to be brought aboard the flagship. The combat will take place within the hour." The channel closed, stared at Daniel with a mixture of fear and admiration. "You know you cannot win," she said. "Warriors train their entire lives for single combat. You will be facing the best of the best." "I know." Daniel stood and stretched his burned hands. "But I have something they do not." "What is that?" "Nothing left to lose." He looked at her with steady eyes. "And a reason to fight. You saved me when you could have killed me. Now I will fight for us both." Had no response. She could only watch as the ships surrounded their shuttle and pulled them in with tractor beams. The final battle was about to begin. The combat arena aboard the flagship Eternal Wrath was ancient and sacred. Generations of warriors had fought and died on its stone floor, their blood soaking into the rock until it had turned permanently dark. Thousands have filled the viewing galleries, their dark eyes fixed on the spectacle below. Daniel stood at one end of the arena, wearing simple combat clothing provided by his captors. His burns had been treated, but his body still ached from the damage he had suffered. Across from him, the High Matriarch's champion waited. His name was, and he was magnificent. He stood nearly 2 meters tall, his silver skin covered with the scars of 100 victories. His muscles moved like water beneath his flesh. His dark eyes held no mercy and no doubt. He was the finest warrior that had produced in a century. He had never lost a single combat. Daniel was going to fight him anyway. The High Matriarch herself sat on a throne above the arena, her ancient face unreadable, stood nearby under guard, watching with fear in her eyes. Human, the High Matriarch called out, her voice carried across the silent arena. You have invoked the right of challenge. Do you understand what this means? I do, Daniel replied. If you fall, your death satisfies our honor, and the traitor dies with you. If you somehow prevail, both of you go free and the hunt is declared unjust. Do you accept these terms? I accept. The High Matriarch raised her hand. Then let the combat begin. Moved first. He crossed the arena in 3 strides, his blade flashing toward Daniel's throat. Daniel barely dodged, feeling the wind of the blade against his skin. He rolled sideways and came up running. Do not match him strength for strength. Words echoed in his mind. You will lose. Daniel ran. He circled the arena, keeping distance between himself and the champion. Pursued with patient confidence, his movements economical and precise. You cannot run forever, human said. I know, Daniel replied. I am just getting started. Attacked again. His blade carved patterns in the air that Daniel could barely follow. One strike caught Daniel's arm, opening a shallow wound. Another grazed his shoulder. Daniel fell back, bleeding. The crowd roared with approval. But Daniel was watching. He was learning. Every attack made followed a pattern. The champion was skilled beyond measure, but he was also predictable. He fought the way he had been trained to fight, and his training assumed his opponents would fight the same way. Daniel was not trained at all. When lunged again, Daniel did something no warrior would ever do. Instead of blocking or dodging, he threw himself directly into the attack, inside the arc of the blade. His weapon passed over Daniel's shoulder, cutting only air. Daniel drove his elbow into the champion's throat. Staggered back, choking. For the first time, surprise showed on his face. What kind of fighting is that? He demanded. Human fighting, Daniel said. We never learned the rules. They clashed again. Daniel took more wounds, his blood spattering on the ancient stone. But he kept moving, kept dodging, kept finding small moments where he could land strikes of his own. He was losing. He knew he was losing, but he was not losing quickly. The crowd grew quiet. They had expected a swift execution. Instead, they were watching something they had never seen before, a prey species that refused to die. Grew frustrated. His movements became faster, more aggressive. He stopped playing with his opponent and started trying to end the fight. Daniel let him come. When overextended on a powerful thrust, Daniel was ready. He the blade by centimeters and grabbed the champion's arm. Using momentum instead of strength, he redirected the strike and sent stumbling forward. Before the champion could recover, Daniel drove his knee into the back of his leg. The warrior fell to one knee. Daniel wrapped his arms around his throat. The champion thrashed and fought, but Daniel held on with everything he had. Humans were not as strong as, but they were stubborn. They could endure pain that would break other species. Clawed at Daniel's arms, drawing blood. Daniel did not let go. The champion tried to slam Daniel against the arena floor. Daniel held on. His movements grew weaker. His silver skin began to pale. His struggles slowed. Finally, he collapsed. Daniel released his hold and stumbled backward, his body screaming with pain. Lay on the arena floor, unconscious but alive. The arena was silent. Daniel looked up at the High Matriarch. I claim victory. The ancient female stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she rose from her throne and descended to the arena floor. The crowd parted before her like water. She walked to where Lay and examined him. Her champion was breathing but defeated. Then she turned to Daniel. You should not have won, she said. By every measure, you should be dead. I get that a lot, Daniel replied. Something shifted in the High Matriarch's expression. It might have been respect. It might have been wonder. What are you? She asked. Daniel thought about the question. He thought about ice ages and plagues and wars. He thought about all the times humanity should have been destroyed and was not. He thought about the stubborn, foolish, wonderful refusal to give up that defined his species. I am human, he said. We do not know how to quit. The High Matriarch nodded slowly. I declared you prey because a human shamed my people, but now I understand the truth. You are not prey. You are something we have never encountered before. She raised her voice so the entire arena could hear. The challenge is satisfied. Daniel Cole and are declared free. The hunt is ended. The crowd erupted in confused murmurs. This had never happened before. A prey species had never defeated a champion. But the High Matriarch was not finished. Furthermore, she continued, I declare that humans are no longer to be considered beneath our notice. They have proven themselves worthy of respect. From this day forward, they will treat humanity as equals. Broke free from her guards and ran to Daniel. She caught him as he began to fall, his body finally giving out from exhaustion and blood loss. You did it, she whispered. We did it, he corrected. You chose to save me when you did not have to. Everything that followed came from that choice. Later, aboard an Earth Alliance diplomatic vessel, Daniel watched through a viewport as human ships flew in formation for the first time in history. Stood beside him, her presence now a comfort rather than a threat. Commander Lisa Morgan approached them with news. They have requested formal diplomatic relations with Earth. They want to serve as their first ambassador to humanity. She looked at Daniel with new respect. They also asked specifically that you be present at all major negotiations. Why me? Because you showed them what humans truly are. They want to understand how a species like us could exist. Morgan smiled. I think you scared them a little, honestly. Daniel laughed quietly. His wounds still hurt. His body still ached. But for the first time in weeks he felt at peace. Touched his arm gently. My people have a new name for humans now. They call you the unyielding ones, the species that refuses to fall. Is that good? It is the highest compliment we can give. Daniel looked out at the stars, at the ships flying together, at the future that was just beginning. The galaxy had underestimated humanity. They had seen small bodies and short and assumed weakness. They had not understood that true strength came not from muscles or technology, but from the refusal to surrender. After that day, they would never forget. Humanity had arrived, and they were here to stay.